Okay, hello and welcome to another episode of the Women Developer Academy Speaker Series. For the past 7 weeks, we have been having different speakers coming to share with us insights as part of the Women Developer Academy program, Sub-Saharan Africa. Today, we are going to be joined by Jackie Moraa, who is a software engineer and a Flutter developer at Living Goods in Nairobi, Kenya. I'm going to hand it over to her to just walk us through who she is and tell us more about the semantics widget for accessibility using Flutter. Hi, Jackie.
Hi, and thank you so much. So yes, for this presentation, we are going to be talking about the semantics widget for accessibility. So first, let me start by thanking you all for taking time out of your schedules to join me for this WDA session. I do not take it for granted, and we can get started. And this is the session format which we will follow. We'll start with an introduction of the speaker, that's me, before diving into the topic. And as for the topic, we'll first brush up on key concepts around accessibility, why it's important, the Flutter techniques that we can use to ensure our applications are accessible, and this will lead us to the semantics widget. We'll then dive more into this useful widget before finalizing with questions. So let's get started. And in honor of September month, there'll be some cake in this session, so stay tuned for that. So about myself, my name is Jackie Moraa. I am currently a software engineer and team lead by day and a Flutter enthusiast by night. I have been learning Flutter for about a year and a half, and I consistently and actively share what I learn on Medium, so you can also say I'm a technical writer as well. I am a Women Tech Makers ambassador in the Nairobi chapter, and I always advocate for more women in tech and mentoring young professionals as they start their careers journey. So you can find me on social media on X, GitHub, or Medium at Kimora, and on LinkedIn at Jackie Moraa, and I'll share these handles at the end of the presentation as well. So for our main topic today around accessibility and the semantics widget, we'll start with finding out what is accessibility. So accessibility is the inclusive practice of ensuring that there are no barriers to your website, software, application, or products, which will prevent the users from fully interacting with it. Therefore, accessibility will enable people of all abilities to understand, perceive, and interact with your software fully, hardware as well, or service from end to end. What accessibility isn't is accessibility isn't a barrier to innovation. So it will not force you to make a product that is ugly, boring, or cluttered. It will only introduce a set of constraints that you can incorporate as you design and develop your application. And these constraints will give you new ideas to explore, which can lead to better products for your users. So it may seem a bit hectic at first to incorporate and include in your application, but once you understand the importance of creating accessible software, you'll see the need of having it as a feature considered at the beginning of your application development. So what does accessibility in application matter? So about 15% of the world's population, this is about 1 billion people, have some form of accessibility needs. So when your application is not accessible, you will be deliberately blocking out a huge number of people from using your application. So if
Oh, sorry, apologies. Our speaker was experiencing an internet issue, but she is back. Hi, Jackie. Hope it's all clear now.
Hi. So I didn't even know I dropped off, so I need to know where we left each other.
No, it's all good, all good. You are explaining accessibility to us.
Okay, do I need to share my screen again?
Yes, please.
Okay. So is that better?
Yes,
That's where
all
we
good.
were. Okay, great. So this is the slide I need to start from, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. So sorry about that. So we were just talking about accessibility and what accessibility is. So accessibility is the inclusive practice of ensuring that there are no barriers to your software or your website or your product, and it will allow all users to be able to fully interact with it. So accessibility will allow people of different capabilities or abilities to perceive, understand, interact, and navigate with your software or hardware from end to end. So what accessibility isn't a barrier to innovation. It will not force you to make a product that is ugly, boring, or cluttered. And this is a quote by Jesse Hausler from Salesforce Design. It will just introduce a set of constraints that you can use to ensure that your application is usable to everybody. So it should not be an afterthought. This accessibility should be something that should be going into the development process at the beginning. It may seem hectic or daunting at first because there's so many things to consider, but once you understand why accessibility is important, then you will see the need of having it as a feature at the beginning. So this is just the importance of accessibility. So accessibility is important because you have approximately 15% of the world's population experiencing some form of disability or accessibility needs. So when your application is inaccessible, you will be deliberately excluding about 1 billion people from accessing your application. And this will portray your brand in a negative light. Aside from that, we also have user experience, and this is not only for people with capabilities and disabilities. It will improve the overall user experience for everybody. Aside from that, if your business is driven by revenue, you have a broader use base from a business sense that could lead to more revenue for your applications. So if you're looking at the number of downloads or the number of users per month, then having your product accessible to the 1 billion people who have accessibility needs will be a metric that you would need to consider. Another case here is for regulatory frameworks, which stipulate that your software and digital products need to be accessible. Otherwise, you may attract legal complications. So as I was doing my research, actually, I saw that there was a significant increase in the lawsuits in the US between the years 2017 and 2018, and this was for software that was deemed inaccessible. So if you want to also be on the right side of the law, then this might be something you will need to consider. So just to put these numbers into perspective, you have about 1 billion people in the world with disabilities, and this is approximately 13 to 15% of the world's population. So you have 17% with visual impairments, about 6% with hearing loss, 2.6% with intellectual disabilities. And among these, over 40% have access to mobile phones and other software products. So these are actual users who will be using your application. So do consider them in your development process. So there are a number of techniques within Flutter that ensure that your application is accessible. For example, there are contrast ratios. And if you look at the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, you can see that the contrast ratio should be about 4.5 to 1. And also things around tappable widgets, test scale factors, which need to be dynamically set using media query, amongst others. I actually have a video about this on YouTube, which I'll share at the end of the presentation. But a key widget here that is also aimed at ensuring your application is accessible is the Semantics widget, and that will be the focus of our discussion today. So what is the Semantics widget? So the Semantics widget is a widget that provides descriptive labels of your UI elements, what we call widgets. So in Flutter, everything is a widget. So the semantics widget is a widget that annotates other widgets in the widget tree. So by providing these descriptive labels and hints, it will allow screen readers and other assistive technologies to convey the information to people with disabilities, and in this case, people with visual impairments. So by utilizing the semantics widget, you can set labels, hints, and other accessibility properties for your widgets, and therefore enhancing the overall accessibility of your application. And just a note here, Flutter is designed to be accessible from the beginning, from the toolbox itself, as widgets already have semantics properties by default. It's just a matter of knowing how and when to use them so that you can make the most of this feature. So the semantics tree. So in the previous slide, I did mention widget tree. And so let's just touch a bit more on that for understanding. So in order to understand, we'll need to get into rendering. So what is rendering? Rendering in Flutter is just the process of creating the visual representation of the application on the device screen. Everything in Flutter is a widget. Images, text, icons, etc. They are all widgets. So the widget tree is how you create your UI. You position the widgets within each other to build those simple and complex layouts. So rendering is actually more complex than that. So I'll probably not be diving into that, as I do appreciate that my audience is a bit diverse. But there are tons of resources online which you can dive into in case you're curious. So while rendering the widget tree, Flutter also creates another tree, which is called the semantics tree. So each node in the semantics tree is what we call a semantics node, and it might represent either one or a group of widgets, which are the UI on the widget tree. So what is held in the semantics tree is what is important for semantics analysis tools and assistive technology tools. So in Flutter Web, this is useful for search engines that can read web pages, or in mobile applications, it's useful by accessibility services such as Google Talkback in Android and VoiceOver in iOS. So these assistive technologies make use of what is in the semantics tree to be able to provide meaning to the widget tree for the users who are not able to visualize the elements on the screen. So to use the semantics widget, you simply wrap your widget tree by wrapping other widgets with the semantics constructor. So you make use of the variety of properties availed by the semantics widget to accurately annotate the UI. So the semantics constructor has a ton of properties for the metadata or for the meta information of a widget. So let's just look at some of them in the next slide. So this is just a snippet of the properties. There's an exhaustive list in the Flutter docs, which you can look into. But just to look at some of these, you have the exclude semantics, which will replace all child elements within the node. You have enabled, which will just let us know whether an element is in an enabled or a disabled state, and this is a Boolean. So you have other like strings, such as the label string, and this will be providing a description of the widget. You have hints, which are also strings, and they will be describing the result of an action that is performed by the widget. You also have on tap hint in case you have a tappable widget, such as a button or a gesture detector or a link. You can provide that on tap hint string, which will be then read by the semantics analysis tool to let the user know what will happen if they are to tap on this particular widget. So again, there's a long list of this which you can look into so that you understand what goes into the semantics constructor. So there are different types of the semantics widget. We have the base semantics widget, and this is the most common type of semantics widget. So it will just provide a default set of properties that you can use to describe the meaning of a widget. So you can wrap the semantics widget, let's say on a button or on a text, and you can just give the labels as to what that button is, or on tap hints as to what will happen when that button is clicked. Then we have the merge semantics. So the merge semantics is a widget that merges the semantics of its descendants. So everything in Flutter is a widget. So let's say that you have a text box and a checkbox on the side, and these two are related. When you tap on the checkbox, the label on the side is related to that checkbox. So when you're looking at merge semantics, you can merge the semantics of this checkbox and the text label so that they are read together. Because when you look at how the semantics analysis reads the widgets around the UI, it can skip one and go to another. So if you want to provide meaningful information to the user, you would not want to separate widgets that are similar. So you would use the merge semantics to just group them together so that when these are being read, they will be represented at the same time, enabling the user to understand that these are actually related. In the example of your account details, so you have your name, you have your account number, and you have your balance. So you want all of them to be read at the same time. When the account balance is read separately before reading the account, then it doesn't make any sense. There's no meaning to it. It's just a number. Then you have the index semantics. So the index semantics is used by the assistive technologies to announce about the current scroll state. So you have widgets such as the list view, which are scrollable widgets. So you might want to manually provide semantics to the children in the list view so that we know which ones are the important ones. When you look at how we create list views, you would end up with maybe spacers or dividers. And these spacers and dividers do not contribute to the number of items in the list view. So if you want us to just know how many items are in the list view, we can provide the index to the actual number or the actual widgets that contribute to the semantics, as opposed to spacers and dividers, which do not add any particular meaning. So you can skip this as irrelevant widgets. We also have other semantics such as semantics gesture detectors, which allow you to listen for gestures on a widget, as well as like the semantics action that allows you to define custom actions for widgets. So let's look at a bit of code and a bit of demo. So here we have a simple program that shows cakes. So remember, I promised there will be. So we have our UI. On the app bar, we just have the navigation drawer icon. Then we have the header, which is the name of the particular page. Then we have actions, which include the account icon. So here we have wrapped each of these in a semantics. So this is the semantics widget that we are wrapping it around. So, and we call this, we give it the button property and we set it to true, and this will allow the semantics to know that this is an actual tappable widget, and the user might need to tap on it in order to perform a specific action. So the label that we've given it here is the navigation drawer icon, so that the user will, when that particular widget is in focus, the user will be able to know that this is a navigation drawer icon. And on tap hint just provides the hint of to what will happen when the user will double tap it. So when the user clicks on it, they're supposed to view the navigation drawer items. Then for the header, we've just provided the semantics property header so that we know that this is the contents of this page and this is what this page does. Then we have our actions. Here we've wrapped our account icon in a semantics as well, because it's a button and we want the user to, when the user taps on it, they need to view their accounts page. So we have the on tap function there. It's void for now because we're not doing any action per se. Then the next item is the next row, which contains the explore text. So we have the explore text here, but we are wrapping it under the semantics widget and providing a descriptive label on what will now be read by the semantics analysis true, and that will be explore available cakes. So here I have included exclude semantics, and what this will do, the semantics will not read the explore, but it will read the explore available cakes, because I want it to be as descriptive as possible. So for a user who's visually who can visualize it, explore might make sense to them. But for someone who is not visualizing this page, they might need to explore, to read this as explore available cakes. Then we have the next widget here, which is our shopping cart. So on our shopping cart, it is an icon button. So we have provided the button flag and as true so that the widget can know that this is a tappable widget. We have a label that says shopping cart icon, and on tap hint, we are supposed to view cart items. Then the body here contains a grid view of cakes. So we are also wrapping each card in a semantics widget, and this is going to be a button as well, because once you double tap on the particular card, you're supposed to go to a details page. So the button is true, and we have a label that will be read out, which says the cupcake flavor is, insert the name of the cupcake. We have what should happen when the user double taps it. So they will be viewing the cupcake's details, and we're providing an on tap function. So this on tap will just be displaying an alert dialog containing the cake and a bit more details about the cake. So if you notice in this particular instance, we have this wrapped in our semantics widget. So we have two types of actions here. So we have this one on tap, and we have this other on tap. And this is because when you are using it as a user, when the semantics analysis is not active, it will be picking on this. But when you're using it as a user with a semantics enabled, it will be picking this particular block of code. So they are both the same because the action is going to be the same here. So we also have another widget here, which is our widget for the favorites. So on the favorites, we are also putting it in the semantics widget. And now we have another property called the container, which I've given it. And this basically means that it will not just view this card on its own, but it knows that there's another container containing a different widget, which needs to also be read by the semantics. And it's also a button, and we are setting that to be true. And here we have an on tap hint, and this on tap is being guided by a Boolean called isFavorites, because we want, if you have already added it to your favorites list, then the next action should be removing it from your favorites list. So the particular string that will be read will be depending on the Boolean value of its favorite. And when you tap it, then you will be either adding it to the list or removing it from the list, depending on its previous state. So you can see we're also duplicating that over here. And this is because this will be the one that will be accessed by the user who is not having the semantics enabled, while this will be accessed by the user who has the semantics enabled. So this is just the view that we have. So that this is my screen. So when you click on it, you will see the details. And when you double tap on this particular icon, you can see we've added it to favorites, and we've also added that to favorites. That's the view you can remove from favorites. So let's see how this works with talkback enabled. So I'm going to enable talkback.
Talkback activado. Talkback. Atrás. Botón. Toca dos veces para activar.
My assistant is a Spanish-speaking lady, so...
Adjusts. Adjusts.
So
Semantics widget. Chocolate has been added to favorites. Navigation draw icon. Botón. Red. Jackie's cakes. Encabezado. Account. Botón. Toca dos veces para view account page.
Yeah, so you can see it's reading what I put on it here. View account page.
Jackie, account, botón.
Account.
Toca dos veces para view account page.
So tap 2 times to view the accounts page.
Explore available cakes. Shopping cart. Cupcake flavor is chocolate, botón. Toca. Cupcake flavor is Oreo, botón. Toca dos veces para view Oreo details.
So it's telling me to tap 2 times to view the
Alert.
details.
This moist Oreo cupcake has been topped with a fluffy and creamy frosting that simply melts in your mouth. It is a party of flavors in one bite.
Okay. So I'm semantics
navigation draw item,
widget
Jackie's cakes,
or
in Capizado.
talkback. There's a bit of a learning curve for a user who has not used this before, because there's different types of swiping that will let you know whether you're going back or front. So for me, it was a bit of a learning curve
Account
here.
Explore.
Just know how to even
Shopping.
go about.
Cupcake flavor bottom.
So,
Cupcake flavor is red velvet. Bottom. Toca dos veces para add red velvet to favorites list.
so we are hearing to add, to double tap to see the favorites, to add the red velvet to our favorites list. So we can tap
Red
it.
velvet has been added to favorites. Cupcake flavor is red velvet. Bottom.
Yes.
Alert. This moist red velvet cupcake has dismissed.
Okay, it seems we lost our speaker once again. Just give me a moment as I try to reach out to her so that we can have her back. Sorry, everyone. Okay,
Sorry,
Jack, we can hear you now.
You can hear
Semantics widget. Bottom.
Okay, let me
Toca dos veces para remove
present.
chocolate from favorites list.
Thank you all for understanding. She's back. See, nobody actually dropped off.
Yeah, so I'm not sure where I lost you.
Like 2 minutes back.
Okay,
not
so
back.
yeah, have we been able to see the semantics widget on the phone?
Let me add this screen so that everybody can follow through. Yes, I think this should be great. So let me just remove something so it doesn't block your screen. Okay, great. Back to you, Jackie.
Yes. Okay, great. Thank you so much for understanding. I'm not sure what is happening on this end. It seems all is fine, but things are not working. So, yeah. So this is where we probably were.
Strawberry details.
And yes, my talkback, my assistant is in Spanish. I'm sorry for that, but I hope you can understand her. So what we're just saying is now when you go through the semantics, you can see the kind of labels or on tap hints that we have set in the code being read out by our assistive technology tools. So here you can tap to view, and
this moist strawberry cupcake has been topped with a fluffy and creamy frosting that simply melts in your mouth. It is a party of flavors in one bite.
Yes. So
dismiss. Cupcake flavor is chocolate. Bottom.
So if we come here, for example,
bottom. Toca dos veces para add Oreo to favorites list. So Oreo has been added to favorites.
So if I double tap it, it tells me what to do and what has happened and all
Cupcake
that.
Cupcake flavor is vanilla. Bottom. Bottom. Toca dos veces para add vanilla to favorites list. Vanilla has been added to favorites.
So you can see it is also reading what we have put in our
has been topped with a fluffy and creamy frosting.
Snack bar.
Navigation drawer icon, button.
Notification at the
Toca
bottom.
dos veces para view navigation drawer item. Cupcake, button. Toca dos veces para remove vanilla from favorites list.
So it's telling us to tap twice to remove the vanilla from the favorites list. And as we mentioned, this is guided by the isFavorite Boolean. So it can be, we can be able to set the hint that is read when the action is on, when the Boolean is true, or when the Boolean is false. So now if I tap 2 times,
vanilla has been removed from favorites.
We have removed vanilla from favorites. So that's the demo I wanted to show on that. And let's go back to our slides. So there are some best practices that you need to have while you are using the semantics widget. So you have seen the code in practice, and that has just given you an idea. So some best practices here would be to ensure that every screen in your application should try and declare the header elements so that it can provide clarity on the function of that page. So if you use the material app bar components, this will be set automatically. Otherwise, you can set the semantics header. Also, it's important that all buttons are described properly, as they probably have as they are probably one of the most fundamental part of the UI, because through buttons or through links or other tappable widgets, you can be able to get the actual meaning of your application and go from end to end conducting an activity. So when using gesture detectors or other tappable widget regions such as inkwells or links, you need to have proper semantics labeling, which will tell us what that particular button is doing or what that link is doing, so that it provides a good user experience for people with poor or non-visuals. So if you miss this, some tappable regions might not be included in the semantics, and they might be missed. So the actual end goal of your application might be totally not covered. Then use exclude semantics to reduce your clutter. So often you have elements on your screen that have no semantics value. They're probably just there for your UI or something like an abstract background image, which are just there for the visuals. So this will not matter to somebody who's not able to visualize that, right? So use the exclude semantics to remove this so that it's not in the semantics tree, and then it will reduce the noise as the semantics analysis tools go from one semantics to another. Then lastly, you can use the merge semantics. So you will need to merge semantics because Flutter will create a semantic node for all widgets by default once you wrap them. So like all text widgets would have a semantics, but you need to understand how to group them so that there's good user experience, because when some of these texts are read separately, they might not make sense. So my name existing without, let's say, my handle, let's say my Twitter handle existing without my name might not make sense. So you might need to have those two particular text widgets merged together in one semantics node so that they can be read together to provide the full meaning of your application. So debugging and testing. So lastly, testing and debugging are common and most important parts of your application development. So they will assist you to know whether there are any breaking changes that you're introducing in the development process and whether the actual functionality and accessibility of your application has been captured. So there's different ways to do this. So first, by debugging, you want to debug the semantics of your application. You can just pass a certain argument to the constructor of your material app, that is the show semantics debugger. When you set it to true, Flutter will know how to show you the semantics of the widget by simply adding that flag. So when you pass it, it will overlay what we have as the widgets tree to show you the semantics. And this is what we mean. So you have what we had here as the UI, and you are visualizing the widgets as they are. So when you have the show semantics debugger true, this is what you will visualize. So you will see all the areas where you have your semantics constructor. And now you can see, okay, this is a button, this is a button, this was the label that we want to be seen, and this is the button, and so on and so forth. So you can do this to test and clearly see which widgets you have wrapped to the semantics constructor, and if the labels make sense, if the roles are included, and if not, you can go back and redo this. As for testing, you need to test your application's accessibility using assistive technology such as screen readers, just as we've seen in our demo. So emulators are a bit limited in this, therefore test with real devices to ensure that your results are accurate. So both Android and iOS have these built-in accessibility tools that will allow you to evaluate your application's accessibility. So you just need to turn them on in your device settings. So aside from that, consider testing with real users, because as developers and designers, you are not the target audience of your application. You are not the user. So there are certain edge cases that you might miss if you are solely developing with yourself in mind. So consider having users with disabilities testing your application to gather valuable feedback and make necessary improvement. So I know this might be maybe difficult to get, but we can also try to simulate. So for example, have users who you will blindfold and gauge how they can have a success rate in the tasks of your application. So you can have metrics such as how many users will be able to get to the end of the application and order a cake, how many users will be able to make payments, enter shipping details, or add something to the cart or add to favorites. Also monitor their level of frustration. So if you have a very low percentage of users actually getting to the end, then you know that this will be a problem. Or if you have users not able to do a simple activity such as adding something to a cart or adding it to a page or visiting their accounts, then you need to make some valuable changes here. Also write unit tests. And I know some of you have already logged off. You have already gone. Come back. Come back, sit down. So write cases, write unit tests to ensure the functionality of your application is as expected. So in this snippet, we have sample unit test where we are testing the account icon. So the semantics, checking whether the semantics are correct. So you can test the label or you can test some of the semantics that we've included there. So in this case, we have this widget test class, and we are testing whether our account icon semantics are correct. So does it have the proper label that we've set as account? Does it match the on-tap hint, which is view accounts page? Is the button true enabled? Does it have a tap action? Does it have a label? And so on and so forth. So you need to run these tests to ensure that these tests are passing before you can ensure that your application is fully working well and you can roll it out to users to do actual testing. So I have a list of references here that guided me in this process of learning more about this and curating the presentation that we have, and I've linked them here. One of them is a shameless plug. It's a YouTube video that I did the other day, so you can check it out. But I know I've been speaking for a minute, granted with a bit technical hitches, but now it's time to hear from you. Alela, kindly come in with any questions that we have from the audience, any comments or any feedback that we have. So yeah, these are the references that I was talking about. Yeah, so any questions that we have?
Okay, thank you so much, Jackie. I think that was a very lovely presentation, and just getting to learn more about accessibility, and the code samples, and just showing about the test and how to run them. Hello, everyone on the audience. If you have questions, please feel free to drop it on the chat section. Maggie, the session is going to be on YouTube the whole time. You can watch it anytime you feel like. If you have any questions for Jackie that you would like her to address, kindly post it on the chat section, or you could give your compliments as to how amazing the session was. I think maybe for me, Jackie, is if you could take us back to the use cases that when you're building for accessibility, you need to put into consideration. For anybody who missed out on that, would be great for us to hear from you.
Yes, so which slide here? These best practices.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Best practices actually come in quite handy. I think these are some of the things we keep on forgetting to, put into consideration when building application. So a question to you, Jackie, from Maggie once again. Where can we start as new developers focusing on Flutter?
Yeah, that's a very nice question because all the time I still consider myself as a new developer in Flutter. So the thing is to just start. I know that sounds quite cliche, but to just start. So how I started, I read some Flutter docs, and in the Flutter docs, there's some code labs, which I started writing to get familiarized with that, and then started building simple pet projects that are useful. One of the most common ones is a to-do list or a weather app, and so on and so forth. So once you start getting your hands into real applications, you can start to learn more concepts as you move along. So once you get into more complex items, you can realize, oh, I need to learn about state management. Oh, I need to learn about futures and API integrations. But start from just anywhere that you have. The Flutter docs have a good learning process that you can take into consideration.
Okay, Jackie, there's a request from Wangari. If you could kindly share the resources, with them.
Yeah.
I know you, so that we could maybe add them as links, and anybody could be able to access it.
Yes.
Also, would be good maybe if you could tweet the link so that people could just go to your Twitter handle instead, or your LinkedIn.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll do that. So do I just put them in the chat?
Are you able to comment on the chat? You could post it on the private chat, and then
Yes.
I'll make
Okay.
it public before we end the live stream. Another question that comes to mind then is, when you think about the speech to text, the text to speech that you demonstrated, how many languages does it support? Not programming languages, kindly.
Yeah. So like I have mine set to Spanish. My device is in Spanish, and as you can see, it is able to read, to give me the directions in Spanish. I'm not sure whether it can be able to translate your English to Spanish, because as you did notice, it read some of the labels that I had put in English. It did read them in English. So I'm not sure how that works per se, but I think it's something that we can explore to find out whether, if our application is written in a certain language and the semantics are in a certain language, whether those languages can be ported into a different language in another device. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Jackie. Another question again from Maggie is, where did you get the documentation guides while you were getting started?
As I was starting, so the flutter.dev, so or api.flutter.dev, so the Flutter docs. One of the links in the ones that I have shared with you, Alela, has a link to the flutter.dev docs that you can share with them.
Okay, thank you. I've just realized how I copy pasted it. One may lose actually some of the content, so I'm just going to be pasting it one by one. So here's a link to the Flutter docs. There's a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll have to figure out how to do this. My eyesight will have to come in handy. And my God, I can't see the separation. So yeah, let me work on this. At the same time, also there is a question on. Oh, there is a compliment actually. The session was great. I love how you're making us more aware of accessibility. Yes, that is quite true. I learned a lot from just listening about the accessibility aspect, more so with regards to Flutter. The resources you've shared are going to come in handy for anybody who's building, because at the end of the day, I believe we all should build with accessibility at the back of our minds. Kindly feel free if you have questions that you would like Jackie to address, so that she can take them up before we call it a wrap for the day. Okay, if there are none, Jackie, we're very, very grateful. I'm gonna let you share your handles only. But we're so grateful for you setting aside time to just walk us through accessibility and semantics. And I was going to say widgets, then I remembered Flutter is all about widgets. But yes. So thank you so much. Again, please feel free to give us a parting shot and let us know how we can reach out to you.
Okay. Yeah, so thank you once again for taking time to join me in this session, especially if you've stayed on for the full 45 minutes, regardless of the technical hitches. I really appreciate you. Thank you, Alela and the Women Developers Academy for the opportunity to speak here, and my mentor, Bright Sunu, who's a Flutter and Dart GDE, for his consistent support. I look forward to more sessions like this within the Google and Flutter communities. But in the meantime, you can find me on these social media platforms where I continue to share more of my learnings. And yes, this template was provided by SlidesGo. All terms and conditions apply. So go forth and create accessible applications moving forward. It's goodbye from me, and do enjoy the rest of your day and weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jackie. Yeah, we're gonna end the broadcast, but next week we are going to be hosting Velda Chiara, who's also a software developer, and she will tell us what she's going to talk about when the time comes. Looking forward to her session also. This was a lovely one. We will still be having other Flutter-related sessions, as well as web, Android, Angular, and also Google Cloud and machine learning. So please tune in for them. And looking forward to hosting more amazing Women Techmakers ambassadors who are part of the Women Developer Academy program. That's it from me. Goodbye for now.